Hello and welcome to Mind Gourmet. My name is Nina Kaiser. I'm the co-founder of Mind Gourmet and, as always, your host today. My guests today are Carol Kershaw and Bill Wade, and they are the author of this treasure chest of a book called The Worry-Free Mind. And just in case you don't know them yet, here's some essential information about them. Carol Kershaw and Bill Wade are licensed mental health clinicians who ran a private practice in Houston, Texas for 35 years. They specialize in translating the latest findings in the fields of neuroscience and neurobiology into simple, practical tools which people can apply to everyday situations, from personal and relational success to business and leadership achievement. They have been married to each other for over 30 years and run workshops and retreats on dissolving worry, shifting personal reality to states of possibility, activating the healing response for illness and pain, and creating a dynamic flow in life. They have taught in the States and in Canada, Chile, Italy, Spain, and Mexico. Dr. Carol is co-director of the Milton Erickson Institute of Houston. She's a member of the American Psychological Association and an approved consultant for the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis. She's board certified with the status of fellow in EEG biofeedback and the author of The Couple's Hypnotic Dance, and co-author with Bill of Brain Change Therapy, Clinical Interventions for Self-Transformation, and The Worry-Free Mind, published by Career Press. Dr. Bill is co-director of the Milton Erickson Institute of Houston as well, and is licensed as both a marriage and family therapist and professional counselor, holding supervisory status with both licenses. He's a clinical fellow with the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy and is a member and approved consultant with the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis. He's also a long-time student of meditation. Hi, Carol and Bill. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So with my introduction, did I mention everything that is important, or is there anything you would like to add?
I think that pretty much covers it.
Very good.
Perfect. So I would like to open this interview with these questions. Why actually we humans tend to worry so much? And what's the neuroscience behind it?
Well, going back to the pre-dawn of history, our brains have a negative bias. And when we were running around in hunter-gatherer tribes, if you saw a tan object out on the horizon and thought it was a lion but it was a rock, you just expended a few calories to get away. If you thought it was a rock but it was a lion, you probably didn't live much longer. So we are the descendants of those people who looked out for danger and who worried a lot. So that's why our brains have evolved the way that they do.
Yeah, so the first thing we do when we walk into a strange situation, we don't realize we're doing this. We scan the room for potential threat. And anytime we meet a new person, the same thing happens. And so we like to tell people, it's why when you're meeting brand new people, you want to make sure you are at the other person feel more comfortable, because it's just a normal kind of old survival tactic the brain uses.
Okay. And so does that actually connect into us choosing consciously or unconsciously where we place our attention? So you say in the Worry-Free Mind that our reality actually depends on where we place our attention. That's a very powerful statement because we choose where we place our attention. Can you explain it a little more to us?
Yeah, we do, and a lot of times we don't realize we're doing it. But have you ever had this experience where maybe you got up grumpy and you had a hard discussion with somebody and you just don't feel quite right, and the phone rings and you go over and you pick it up and you go, hello, and you've totally shifted your state because your attention then went away from what you were upset about to wanting to speak pleasantly on the telephone.
We get caught in habitual patterns of attending to things, both from a neurochemical point of view and a cognitive point of view. So people get habituated into worrying, habituated into seeing the worst case scenario. And it's not that that's always bad. I mean, we pay people to look at how things can go wrong. And in one sense, that's okay. The problem is people get stuck in a loop like that, and they get habituated to the mind state, the emotional state that they're in, and they can't shift out of it. And they end up unnecessarily limiting themselves on what they might be able to do in a very positive way.
As a matter of fact, we often ask people, like when we're teaching our workshops, how often do you get up and you start the day worrying about something?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost a habit with many people, you know, rather than, oh, this is going to be a great day. I'm going to have lunch with this person. I'm going to take a walk outside, and focusing on what you're looking forward to. But we generally don't start the day like that.
And people can get into this belief pattern that if they stop worrying, that something bad will happen. So that they think that the worry actually keeps bad things away, which really is not accurate.
Right.
Yeah. And so you said worrying actually produces chemicals in our brain.
Yeah.
And that kind of condition us into worrying. Do I understand that correctly?
It makes sense if you're in a dangerous situation, like you're a soldier in Afghanistan, Iraq, or wherever, a police officer in a dangerous situation. Worrying or being aware of what can go wrong, being on hyper alert, makes a lot of sense. The problem is that people get over aroused. They get into a state where those neurochemicals have them over aroused and addicted, if you hooked into what can go wrong. The problem is that most of what is going to dog us or plague us in life has to do with things that are not immediately going to jump out at us. So finances, our children, our primary relationships, work, all of those things are complex. And we're wise to pay attention to them. If we can pay attention to them in a calm way, we can see ways to resolve conflicts, ways to resolve problems, to reinvent things, deal with our finances, children, whatever, in a much calmer way. We're more likely to find appropriate solutions.
Yeah, we like to suggest that you don't have to practice the fearful state because your brain is going to give it to you anyway. In fact, we want to do the opposite. If you get up and you start ruminating about something, maybe it's your favorite, we like to say your favorite Stephen King horror movie, everybody's got one, right? You want to interrupt that. And don't allow yourself to go through to the end, and because actually you never get to the end of the horror movie. It's always got chapter after chapter after chapter, you know.
One other thing to reassure people that if you're calm, that you're still safe. Warriors in Japan, the samurai, were among the most deadly warriors on the face of the earth until gunpowder took over. However, they meditated, and they knew that they could fight only one person at a time. And we know martial artists, and one of our granddaughters is quite skilled in martial arts. And you just keep fighting one person, one person, one person, one person, one person, and very calm, very focused. Now, that doesn't mean you're thinking slowly. You're just very tuned into what you need to do with this task, this task. You get into problems if you think, oh my gosh, there's 6 people here that I have to fight. Then you're pretty much defeated right there. So the samurai were very focused, very calm, and very efficient. Being calm and efficient does not make us less likely to succeed. It actually makes us more likely to succeed.
Yeah, and it actually makes complete sense. And I think many of us are thinking that worrying is just a state of mind, which is actually a lot more. So when I'm reading The Worry-Free Mind, your book, and I'm understanding that what we feel, what we think and believe actually even impacts the genetic expression in our bodies on a daily basis. And that's a huge thing.
That is very huge. This is so cool that we have the ability to turn off 1,200 stress genes that can lead to a chronic illness.
Wow.
Just by our mental environment. And that's why we really encourage people to intentionally practice being calm. One of the easiest ways to do that is go sit in front of some kind of running water, whether it's a little fountain, or you can go by the Pacific Ocean where you are living, which is lovely. You know, it puts you into an amazing, calm mental state. But it's so important to practice that.
Yes. And so actually, one of the very empowering messages of your book is that we have far more control over our brain and our brain states than we think. Can you give us a taste of what's possible?
Sure. People often think if they're depressed or they're anxious or worried, that's happening to them. That's not the fact. We worry, it may be habitual, it may be natural, but we have the ability to alter what's going on in the brain. Studies have been done that people who meditate have less activity in the amygdala and the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and that when those calm down, what's happening in the right prefrontal cortex tends to calm down, and they tend to then be less anxious, less angry, less reactive. And so we know from brain imaging that this is true. And we know that people can, through meditation, through brain exercises, EEG biofeedback, hypnosis, psychotherapy, that the quality of their lives, we know this anecdotally, as well as with some research, that they're happier. And when they're happier, they are more fulfilled and they're more successful in however they define success.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the exercises we like to do with groups is ask people to think about something a little bit anxious. And we ask them to look straight up at the ceiling and try to keep the feeling going. And it is completely impossible. And it's always astounding, even to clinicians. We had one gentleman say, "God, give up my practice if this is so easy to get over," you know.
Actually, that's not true, but
Right.
And you don't do it for your driving, please.
Right, exactly.
Keep your eyes on the road.
That's right.
Yeah. So there are, again, a number of exercises that interrupt, because our occipital lobe, our visual system in the brain, has a lot to do with where we pay attention, and where we pay attention has a lot to do with whether we're worrying or we are not. I work a lot with athletes. In fact, just got a call from a coach that I've done a lot of work with, and he was telling me about one of his pole vaulters, and she would have the problem of no hiding, which means she would run through. She'd start thinking about something, thinking about clearing the bar rather than just going on automatic. And he told her to stop thinking. And so what she did was notice her socks, and just notice her socks all the way down and stop thinking. She started clearing bars. Then she heard a sound and started just focusing on the sound and went on automatic pilot. So again, she changed the way she had her focus, and instead of interrupting herself and what she knew how to do and practice quite well, she was able to do in a meet. And so we see this with performers in music, performers in athletics, business, and so forth, that as they shift their focus of attention to something that's at least neutral, rather than what happens if I don't do X, then they accomplish it much more frequently.
Yeah, and so it's, again, it's very easy to do. If you just, you can only ruminate, for example, if you're focusing inside yourself.
Right.
You take your attention and you look out the window, and for example, you just start noticing if there are any little animals, squirrels around or whatever. You interrupt the worry mind. You can't keep worrying. It takes a little bit of energy and work to worry, actually.
More than is profitable.
Right.
And probably one of the things we can practice is remembering that we have these tools. Yes. Because in this movie that you described, there normally doesn't appear this tool, like,
that's right,
your focus. You are so plugged into it that often, at least I feel like, I forget everything I know once I get too deeply into worrying.
Yes.
Yes. Well, it's true because then you enter into amnesia. And
Kind
so,
of.
and so if you wait too long, then you're going to have to run the movie to at least one of the endings you've been familiar with, and then you can interrupt it. But if you can start earlier, then you won't have to get to the end.
And what you're talking about is state-dependent memory and learning.
Yeah.
What you learn in one state of arousal, one brain state, you remember best in that brain state. So if you get too worried, you literally forget things that you know how to do. You literally forget information. And we've worked with students in exams and things like that.
Mhm.
And Carol has helped people prepare for graduate exams
Mhm.
and help them stop worrying. And they were able to then retrieve the information because most people study in a calm state.
Right.
They get anxious and they get into the test room, then all of a sudden they don't have access to that information because they're in a whole different biological state.
Mhm. In fact, I was working with one young woman from Mexico City. We were doing a session on the internet, and she had taken her graduate exam 3 times and she couldn't pass it.
Oh.
And it was very troubling. Her whole future, rested on her passing this exam. So I said to her, "Are you anxious?" And she said, "No, I don't think so." But of course I knew she was. And I said, "Look, the information you have studied," and she said she studied, "is in the state you were in when you were studying.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, you must re-enter that state in order to retrieve the information." So I had her practice going to the exam room and get into that relaxed state of mind. And the next time she took the exam, she aced it. It was great.
And this is so powerful. Is that what we call mental rehearsal?
It was a kind of mental rehearsal, but paired with a relaxed state of mind. So
Okay.
it's the mental state that's so crucial to what we do.
The mental rehearsal is useful in the sense that it puts particulars in the person's mind in terms of images. And when you pair that with a relaxed state, then they may go into a room or an athletic competition or whatever. And those visual cues that previously had triggered anxiety or tension then are paired as in a classical conditioning sort of way with being relaxed and calm and focused.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's very empowering and it's very encouraging to know that this state of worry and anxiousness that, as you say, often feels like it happens to us, actually is something that we can quite easily get a hold of. And one more thing that I so like about your book is that it gives so much help, relief, and encouragement in getting rid of worry, but it also says, hey, there's so much more to your mind. I mean, you can not only stop worrying, you can do a lot more than you actually think. So in part 2 of your book, you speak about the deep state and future think as the brain's superpowers.
Yeah.
What is that?
So excuse me. So the deep state is fascinating. Well, Bill, you should tell the story of that client you had. Who came with migraine headaches.
Okay. Yeah, had a client who came. I'd seen him in therapy sometime before about some other issues, and he came to me with terrible migraine headaches, bad enough that he had to go home and be silent and asleep for about 24 hours in a dark, air-conditioned room. He also was doing an MBA program through an online program, University of Phoenix, and was an IT executive in the medical center. When we talked, he said that here was another issue that he wanted to talk about, but he wanted to deal with the migraine headaches first. So we went through EEG biofeedback, alpha theta training during the summer, and he got completely over his migraine headaches. Jump ahead a few years, he still was having no migraine headaches. If he had any tingling of one, he'd just close his eyes for a few minutes and there would be no headache. So when it came back for follow-up session after that summer, he told me about the situation. And he thought when he first came in that his wife was being unfaithful to him. Now, he would get up and go to work, come back, and then be on his computer for the master's program. His daughter and his wife, and they were there in Houston, and Houston gets devilishly hot. During this, we're lucky if it doesn't get above 98 degrees. And they had a 6-year-old daughter. She wasn't in school. So his wife, was pretty much housebound during most of the day. And just by happenstance, she ran into an old boyfriend online. Now, the truth is that he was in China, married and had a family. And she was married in Houston. And they were just conversing. Well, he was very afraid that an affair was getting started. After the Alpha Theta training, very deep state training in neurofeedback, he said, I think I was wrong. And I said to him, oh, tell me why.
Yeah.
Well, he grew up Jewish and it lived in New York in a very conservative Orthodox neighborhood. His father was Jewish, his mother was Japanese. In conservative forms of Judaism, you're Jewish because of your mother. And he went to an Orthodox conservative school. And while nobody, he said anything, they didn't participate in all the holidays and all the rituals, he always felt left out. And nobody did anything overtly, but as a little boy, he felt like there was something wrong. And then he said, I didn't think, and he kind of giggled, I didn't think I was kosher. And that helped, that got him into thinking that the shoe was going to drop. And so because he didn't think he was good enough, and he was in a stressful situation, wasn't able to deal with his wife and family through this program. And it was a program that she wanted him in because they wanted to have economic security. And they knew that this degree would ensure his future with his company. So he said, I think I misunderstood her because of this. And we had never talked about that. He developed this insight, this complete shift of thinking, because he was able to go in this deep state for a whole other reason, the migraine headaches, over a period of time for about 12, 13 weeks, twice a week. And it shifted, it changed the way he looked at the world. And what we realized is that when a person gets in a very neutral, calm state, they then can look at things from a very different perspective, one that doesn't have self-blame or other blame, but they take in information differently. In an anxious mind, a worried mind, what happens is that all gets gobbled up in a difficult way.
Yeah, so we were fascinated with what happened. We began to search the neuroscience literature, and lo and behold, over the studies that we discovered, people would, in the 80s, for example, go into those flotation tanks. They would be in a state right above sleep for about 30 minutes. They lost weight, anxiety disappeared, depression lifted, they became happier, cheerful. And so we started looking at using this deep state right above sleep.
Yes.
And we've got a script in where you take yourself all the way down right above sleep and just kind of hover there 10 minutes or more. And it actually acts like a reset button to your brain.
We're just on the cusp of understanding how the brain heals itself, how the brain is able to, again, heal the body in ways that heretofore we've never thought existed.
Right. That's right. It's very exciting work.
Yeah. And so hearing about the deep state, how ties the future think into this?
So future thinking is in hypnosis, we use a $25 term called pseudo-orientation in time. And when you begin to create in your mind your future, you create an alpha state, alpha frequency, which is self-comfort, and you slow your brain waves down, and anything in your future is possible. So as you begin to focus on your most preferred future, which is a much better thing to practice than the worst possible future.
Yes.
That we most of us practice. The brain then begins to act like your own internal GPS. So you're going to begin to notice synchronicities, serendipities, those experiences that open doors for you in a way that you think, oh, wow, is that amazing? You meet people, People give you opportunities, but you won't see them unless you've slowed your mind down and you're in that calm state and you've been practicing your positive future. It's very powerful.
And in that calm state, again, what Erickson did would have people go be their future self, talk to them and ask and tell them what they did to solve the problem. Well, because they were in this calm state, they're receptive to what they already knew rather than say, no, that can't be done. No, that can't be done. Because people get into, when they're anxious, they get into saying, no, I can't do this, I can't do that, can't do this. But when they come from the future to themselves in a hypnotic trance, they're open to hearing what it is that they're actually saying to themselves rather than from somebody else saying it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is so powerful. And I have read and heard that actually the brain doesn't distinguish between something that is really happening or something that we imagine. So that's powerful.
Yes, it is. Yes, that's right.
That's why mental rehearsal in a calm state has such power for athletes, business people, performers, because they then condition themselves. The brain gets ready to replicate in the physical world what it imagined in the mental world.
Now, of course, one needs to develop a plan of action in order to get to that future. So we're not saying you just go booga booga, and I'm going to imagine this future and you don't do anything to move toward that. But it is a reprogramming of possibility that we think. And so you begin to see these amazing events that come into your life that will help propel you to that future.
And isn't it almost like remembering our future?
Yes.
It's a good way to put it, yes.
Exactly.
And I get always fascinated with what time actually is or isn't, and how you can create your future inside of you. And by remembering it, it kind of feels as if it is in the past, but actually it's still externally in the future.
That's right. Right.
So towards the end of your book, you, as I understand it, you took it even a step further and you speak about the mastery mind, the whole brain state, and flow state. What are these states and how do we benefit from them?
So the flow state is an amazing state that everybody gets into. Another word for that would be the zone.
Mm-hmm.
And you're likely to enter it when you're daydreaming or you're dancing or you're painting or doing something creative, running, doing a sport. We would say your cognition kind of goes offline. Your critical mind goes offline when you enter into the flow state. In fact, Bill and I were in a couple of summers ago, we were in Edinburgh and did this wonderful fun experience called the bungee bounce, where you had a vest put on you and they had rubber tubes tied to this huge geodesic dome and you'd bounce kind of on a trampoline. We only did that 3 minutes, and so we had this personal kind of experience where we said to each other, all right, let's try to have a worry thought.
Okay.
For 2 hours. We could not.
Really?
We were in such a state of flow, and because it releases really cool chemicals, that anandamide gets a number of other things. And so we want to encourage people to intentionally put themselves into a zone. Be sure you're doing something, not working all the time, but where you're taking yourself out of your normal state of mind and bring this flow state. It's amazing.
We thought about flying over the Atlantic and something bad happening. We couldn't think of something that was bad, and we let alone have the emotional response that could get into worrying about what might happen on the trip back for 2 hours. And by that time, our heart rates were back down, our respiration was back down, so there was not a lot of influx of oxygen, more than normal. And it all had to do with this flow state. It had to do with the brain state.
This has a tremendous application for entrepreneurs, for couples, for any kind of issue you're working on. And the idea is you take your mind out of it. If you get into the zone a little later, after you've sort of even moved out of that, boom, your mind will give you an amazing solution to a problem. And it always is the case. This is an amazing tool. This organ we have is just astounding in what it gives us. It's many gifts.
3 pounds.
That's right. Yeah.
So are we in a whole brain state when we are in a flow state?
Yes.
Yes, and the whole brain state, that term actually comes from neurofeedback, EEG biofeedback, which means that the blood flow equalizes in the hemispheres. So when we're fearful, blood is unequal in the hemispheres, and that gives us some states of anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
This on QEEG or fMRI picture. In fact, we have a picture of that, of a person in a panic state, and their blood flow is so unequal. And well, another way to balance that, to enter a whole brain state, is to take a ball. We describe this in the book. Give yourself a number on distress, 1 to 10, 10 being high, and then toss a ball across your midline, 6 to 8 times, and pause, and then ask yourself, what number are you now?
Mm-hmm.
It normally will come down, and you work yourself all the way down to 1, and then ask yourself to think about the problem again. If the number goes up, you do it again. You'll get down to a 1, and you won't be able to have the number go up after a while because the blood flow has equalized.
This is so fascinating.
Right.
This is so fascinating. And I just can encourage everybody to read your book. But if people want even to go a step further and like to meet you in person or work with you, what are their possibilities?
Well, if they would go to our website, doctorscarolandbill.com, doctors without punctuation, and there's a little free gift on the website. Give us your email address. We'll send you a newsletter once a month, and that will tell people where we're going to be in terms of the workshops we're doing. And then we're available to do consultations, and if people are interested in that as well.
Over the phone or over Zoom or Skype,
right?
Something like that.
Which means that actually it doesn't matter where in the world your clients are.
Right.
That's
right.
True.
Yes. Or where we are.
Right.
Or where you are. That's right.
Right.
So before I close this conversation, is there anything important I oversaw and that you would like to add in here?
I think, the overarching idea here is that when people have more abilities than they think they do, and you can learn how to make your brain work for you, you can do an awful lot of things before people end up feeling like they need to take medication. We're not anti-medication, but there's just so many aspects and strengths that everybody has, no matter their background. They have the ability to overcome many things and to live in states of thriving for longer periods of time.
And when we calm the brain down, we're in an optimal brain state, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
The world around us looks very, very different.
Right.
Things don't seem to be problems. They just seem to be the stuff that's out there that we can use. Some we use more, some we use less. And so the most successful people are the people who experience the world in terms of information and possibility.
Mm-hmm.
They're experiencing the world far differently. Is that outside has to all match up to their expectation, and then they get caught in disappointment, anxiety, and worry, and then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Here, the brain creates a reality that we can utilize in ways that, again, we're just barely beginning to imagine.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this with us, your time, your knowledge, and for being here with us. It was such a pleasure for me. I'm very thankful.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And Bye, everybody. And always remember that you take the driver's seat in the car called your life. And if we here at MindGourmet can support you with food for thought, it is our pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye.